Our third wedding anniversary was a week away when Damon's ex-girlfriend Sylvia appeared on our doorstep, a small boy of about 5 clinging to her hand, his eyes wide and mirroring his father's. She was here, she sobbed, to ask me to divorce Damon to make way for them. The white flower, as I privately dubbed her for her artfully cultivated air of delicate victimhood, wept with a tragic beauty. "I'm so sorry," she choked out, tears streaming down her pale cheeks. "I never wanted to disrupt your lives, but I have nowhere else to turn." Through her hiccuping sobs and carefully constructed narrative of woe, I pieced together their history. Sylvia and Damon had been college sweethearts, a golden couple who, after graduation, naively decided to build a business from scratch. Damon, in a fit of youthful rebellion against his affluent family, had never revealed his true identity as the heir to the Thorne fortune. They'd lived in a cramped basement apartment, surviving on instant noodles and threadbare hope. Their venture predictably had crashed and burned, leaving Damon a wreck. Sylvia, ever the pragmatist beneath the fragile exterior, had stuck by him for 2 grueling years before finally, and understandably, abandoning the sinking ship. It was only after she left, she claimed, that she discovered she was pregnant. In a decision that screamed of either profound naivety or calculated foresight, she'd kept the child, raising him alone for 5 long years. Until now. I kept my expression neutral, though a storm was brewing inside me. "And so? What exactly do you expect from me now, showing up like this?" Sylvia. No, I had to stop thinking of her as some innocent bloom. Looked at me, her eyes pleading. "I know I've wronged you terribly, Alara. But could you find it in your heart to divorce Damon?" I blinked. Had she mainlined a lifetime supply of those idiotic CEO romance novels where the long-lost love returns with a child, expecting the world to rearrange itself? "Do you have any idea what you sound like right now?" I asked, my voice dangerously calm. "You're the other woman, barging into my home, demanding I step aside." She clutched the boy Leo, I later learned, a miniature Damon tighter, her sobs escalating. "Ms. Linwood, please just pity us. You and Damon don't have children yet. A divorce, it wouldn't impact you as much." I had nothing more to say to someone whose moral compass was so spectacularly broken it pointed straight to a self-serving abyss. I cut to the chase. "You can leave. Now." My voice was ice. "If Damon wants a divorce, he can come and tell me himself." And then I thought, watch me slap the audacity right off his handsome face. As if summoned by my thoughts, the front door burst open, and Damon himself rushed in, looking flustered and angry. "Alara, whatever fire you have, direct it at me. Sylvia and the boy haven't done anything to provoke you." My eyebrows shot up. So 2 slaps wouldn't be nearly enough. Sylvia, ever the actress, immediately tugged at Damon's arm. "Damon, no, it wasn't Ms. Linwood. I came to her." Damon faltered for a moment, then plowed on, his gaze fixed on me. "Alara, I'm sorry about this. I didn't know Sylvia was pregnant, that she'd had Leo before we got married." I waited, a cold knot tightening in my stomach. If Sylvia had found her way to our door, it meant Damon had been seeing her, hiding it from me for some time. He took a deep breath. Then the next blow landed. "I was going to tell you after our anniversary tomorrow, but since you know now, let's just get it over with." He couldn't quite meet my eyes. "Let's get a divorce." Our marriage, Damon's and mine, had been at its core a strategic alliance between 2 influential families, the Thornes and the Linwoods. We were old family friends, though with a 3-year age gap, we hadn't interacted much until after I graduated college. I knew little of his past romances, but I hadn't married Damon purely for business. There were feelings involved, or so I'd believed. 5 years ago, fresh out of university and taking the reins of my family's company, I found myself collaborating with the Thorne Corporation on a major project. Damon was the lead on their side. He was somewhat aloof back then, a man of few words wrapped in a subtle melancholy that I, in my youthful idealism, found intriguing. I, on the other hand, was a freshly minted graduate, buzzing with ambition and a naturally outgoing personality. Our interactions were mostly me talking, a torrent of ideas and plans, and him listening, his dark eyes occasionally showing a flicker of something I couldn't quite decipher. This went on for 3 months until the project was finalized, and our frequent meetings ceased. About a month later, Damon started appearing at my office, offering to drive me home. It wasn't subtle, anyone with eyes could see he was pursuing me. He was undeniably handsome, and that touch of brooding mystery was precisely the type to captivate a young woman like me. Before I agreed to officially date him, I'd asked him why he liked me. "Being with you is easy. Happy," he'd said, a rare smile softening his features. Now those words felt like a cruel joke. It wasn't that I made him happy. I was the rebound, the socially acceptable match from an equally powerful family, the convenient port in his emotional storm after Sylvia. And now that Sylvia, his great, tragic love, had returned with his child, I was merely an obstacle. Damon's voice, laced with a desperate sincerity that sickened me, filled the silence. Alara, Sylvia cut ties with her family for Leo. They only have me now. I can't abandon them again. He even had the gall to try and sweeten the pot. But even if we divorce, you'll still be the esteemed daughter of the Linwood family. Your status won't change. I fought down the rising tide of disbelief, nausea, and the sharp bitter taste of betrayal. Ah, the classic tragic soap opera, complete with emotional blackmail. You two have certainly mastered the art. I'm just the wife being conveniently discarded so your little family, after overcoming such designed hardships and a veritable journey to the west of trials, can finally be reunited. Is that about right? Damon flinched. Alara. Before he could utter another word, Sylvia chimed in with her tearful apologies. Ms. Linwood, I'm so sorry. I cut her off, my patience utterly exhausted. Please leave. You, a mistress, have no standing to apologize to me. This is a matter between my husband and me. Damon immediately stepped in front of Sylvia, shielding her. Alara, watch your words. Sylvia is not a mistress. She had Leo before we were even married. I felt a wave of dizziness. The sheer audacity. What a perfectly matched pair. Wallowing in their self-righteousness. I took a deep, shuddering breath, fixing Damon with a steely gaze. You know my temper, Damon. Get her out of here. Now. Or I can't guarantee this won't escalate into a very public, very ugly scene that will make the evening news. He turned to Sylvia, his expression softening as he gently wiped a tear from her cheek. Sylvia, honey, take Leo and go home for now. I'll sort this out and come find you. Sylvia sniffled, casting a lingering, mournful look at Damon before reluctantly heading towards the door. I sat there in my own living room, a bitter laugh threatening to escape. My husband and his mistress, enacting their grand romantic drama right under my nose. I turned my head away, unable to bear the sight. It was an assault on my eyes, my heart, my sanity. But I never ever imagined their romantic drama could seamlessly transition into a potential crime scene. Sylvia and Leo had only taken a few steps towards the exit when the boy Leo suddenly shot forward like an unleashed hound. He charged at me, shoving me with surprising force. I toppled off the sofa, my head cracking sharply against the corner of the heavy glass coffee table. Stars exploded behind my eyes. I reached up, my fingers coming away slick and warm with blood. Then the child's vicious curse filled the air. You evil woman. You yelled at my mommy. You stole my daddy. Go die. He lunged again, grabbing a handful of my hair and yanking with all his might. The pain was searing, electrifying. Instinctively, I grabbed his collar and my hand flew out, connecting with his cheek in a resounding slap. Only then did Damon seem to snap out of his stupor. He rushed over, but instead of checking on me, he immediately scooped Leo into his arms, his eyes fixing on the red mark blooming on the boy's face. Alara, are you insane? You hit a child. I looked up at him, dazed, the metallic taste of blood in my mouth. He held Leo protectively, while Sylvia rushed back, fussing over the boy's face. If you want to hit someone, hit me, she cried. He's just a child, he doesn't know any better. Only after this touching family tableau, once they'd ascertained Leo was perfectly fine, did Damon finally glance at me. Seeing the blood matting my hair and trickling down my forehead, a flicker of panic crossed his face. Alara, you're bleeding. Oh, should I thank him for suddenly regaining his sight? My head was spinning violently. Seeing Damon still cradling that boy, clearly not about to examine my injuries, I pulled out my phone and dialed emergency services for the police. After I'd made the call, Damon finally spoke, his voice tight with annoyance. Alara, there's no need to blow this out of proportion. I knew what he meant. If the police arrived, both our families would inevitably find out. He'd lose control of the narrative. According to his earlier statement, he'd planned to resolve this privately with me before informing our parents. And how would he have resolved it? Judging by their performance today, it would have been a relentless barrage of emotional blackmail and tearful theatrics. The depths of his shamelessness were truly astounding. How had I, Alara Linwood, ever been so blind as to marry such a man? At the hospital, I was diagnosed with a mild concussion. The gash on my forehead, though it had bled alarmingly, didn't require stitches, but it looked gruesome. Damon, not entirely devoid of sense when faced with actual consequences, had driven me to the hospital himself and managed to cancel the police call before they dispatched anyone. Worried about our parents descending on Sylvia, he'd sent her and Leo home. Considering our family's reputations and the impending launch of a new joint business venture, next month a scandal of this magnitude would be catastrophic. I let him cancel the call. These three weren't worth jeopardizing the project my father had poured his heart and soul into for the better part of a year. Any negative publicity could derail everything. Ironically, my father hadn't initially favored partnering with the Thorns. The Ashworth Corporation had been the superior choice. But because of my marriage to Damon, he'd opted for the Thorns, preferring to keep things in the family. My mother was the first to arrive at the hospital. My father was out of town on business, and the Thorns hadn't been notified yet. My mother, bless her innocent heart, was still unaware of Damon's monumental betrayal. How could she be? I'd only learned of it myself today. It had thoroughly ruined my weekend. After anxiously inquiring about my injuries, she turned to Damon, still seeing him as her beloved son-in-law. Damon dear, what on earth happened? How did things get so out of hand? Damon remained silent, slumped in a chair by the window. My mother sensed the charged atmosphere. She looked at me. Did you two have a fight? She'd always, in disputes between Damon and me, subtly leaned towards his side. Our families were old friends and she and Damon's mother Eleanor were as close as sisters. So, when neither of us answered, she started to gently chide me. Elara darling, can't you be a little less headstrong? Your fiery temper. Only Damon is patient enough to tolerate it. I knew that, usually, after our quarrels, she said these things partly to save face for the Thorn family. Normally, I wouldn't argue. I'd play along, giving Damon an out, perhaps pouting playfully. Mom, who's your real child, me or Damon? Of course, I received similar treatment from Eleanor Thorn. But today my heart was a leaden weight of grief and fury. I had no inclination to spare the Thorns any face. I cut my mother off. Damon is having an affair. His child from it is over 5 years old. Today, his mistress brought the boy to our home to negotiate my exit. My mother's words died in her throat. Even then, Damon couldn't resist defending his precious pair. He repeated his earlier mantra. Elara, it's not an affair. Sylvia had Leo before we were married. She's not a mistress. My mother stared at Damon, then her gaze snapped back to me. So this injury. That mistress did this to you. Her voice was deceptively calm, but I could hear the tremors of barely suppressed rage. Damon, however, likely didn't know her well enough to detect it. He probably thought she was still her usual gentle self. Mom, no, Damon interjected hastily. Sylvia just came to apologize to Elara. Injury. Leo didn't mean it, he's just a child. He accidentally bumped into Elara. Damon didn't finish his sentence. Crack. My mother's hand flew out, striking his face with a force that left 5 distinct finger marks, not one less. The sound echoed in the sterile room. What kind of accident allows a 5-year-old boy to knock a grown woman down and cause this kind of injury? My mother demanded, her voice trembling with fury. Damon Thorn, my affection for you was an extension of my love for your family, but I am not senile. Damon stared at her aghast. Mom! Before he could say more, his phone rang. He glanced at it, hesitated, then declined the call. Sylvia, no doubt. Less than a minute later, message alert chimed. Damon looked at his phone and his face went pale. Mom, Elara, I'm so sorry. Something's happened to Leo. I have to go. My mother moved to stop him, but I shook my head. Let him go. His heart wasn't here. Keeping him would only add to my misery. Damon practically sprinted out of the room without a backward glance. Once he was gone, my mother finally crumbled, pulling me into her arms and weeping. Elara, my poor girl. I patted her back, trying to comfort her. She was a gentle soul, cherished and protected by my father like a delicate flower her entire life. Now in her 50s, she'd never raised her voice in anger to anyone. Striking Damon today had pushed her far beyond the limits of the persona my father had so carefully cultivated for her. By the time Eleanor Thorn, Damon's mother, arrived, I was already back home, the sterile scent of the hospital clinging to me. Her fury was no less potent than my mother's. My mom, between sobs, had recounted the whole sordid affair to her over the phone. Eleanor's eyes, usually warm and kind, blazed as she looked at the gauze on my forehead. That bastard son of mine, Damon, she seethed. He's got some nerve. If I don't break his damned legs, I'll change my surname to match his. I almost smiled. No need to curse herself in the process. One of the reasons I'd agreed to marry Damon relatively young was, admittedly, because I adored his mother. I knew her character, her integrity. After her initial outburst, she enveloped me in a hug. "Alara, my dear, I am so sorry. It must hurt terribly. Rest assured, that woman will never set foot in the Thorn family, and I will absolutely not acknowledge that child as my grandson." Her words were a comfort, but I knew the reality was more complicated. While my mother had been weeping for me in the hospital, my own mind had been racing, coldly analytical. My marriage to Damon was unequivocally over. If I hadn't known about Sylvia and Leo, perhaps we could have continued, a facade of a life. But now that I knew, the marriage was like a beautiful cake laced with arsenic. I couldn't swallow that poison and pretend everything was fine. Even in an alliance marriage, one doesn't ally with a dog. It's a cross-species violation. Besides, he had an illegitimate child. If I tolerated this now, what future awaited me? Paving the way for others? Creating hidden dangers for any children I might have? Impossible. Yet, a wave of profound sadness washed over me as I thought of the future I'd meticulously planned with Damon. Married at 24, our first child, a son at 27, and then a daughter by the time I was 30. All of it now lay in ruins. The next day, our wedding anniversary. The carefully planned surprises and romantic gestures were now utterly redundant. The day transformed into a grim negotiation. Our divorce wasn't just a personal matter. It entangled the financial interests of two powerful families. The news would send ripples, if not shockwaves, through the stock market for both Thorn Industries and Linwood Corporation. The launch of our new joint venture next month would undoubtedly be affected. Damon had been forcibly summoned back by his father, Arthur Thorn. Yesterday, Damon had rushed off because Sylvia, on her way home with Leo, had apparently allowed the boy to fall and injure his leg, landing him in the hospital as well. Why he'd fallen, only Sylvia truly knew. After returning home last night, I'd immediately set my investigators to work on Sylvia. Her story was indeed pitiful. Alone with a child, estranged from her family, she'd moved to a distant city. To support Leo, she'd worked 3 jobs simultaneously, even a degrading stint as a hostess in a seedy bar. Now, with Leo approaching school age, her desire to provide him with the best education clashed with her financial and social limitations. After hitting dead ends everywhere, someone, I suspected with a motive, had leaked Damon's true identity as the Thorn heir and current CEO of Thorn Industries. And so she'd returned to a city with Leo, seeking Damon out, aiming for a reconciliation. But I couldn't muster any sympathy for her. She was 24 when she had Leo. An adult. Any decision made should come with a clear understanding of its consequences. Or even if she'd contacted Damon after Leo's birth before our marriage, I might have grudgingly considered her a somewhat responsible person. But to appear now, child in tow, storming my home with demands, and for Damon, upon learning of this, to prioritize her feelings and emotional blackmail over mine, even to the point of disregarding our family's intertwined interests to demand a divorce. These two were purely and simply out to make my life hell. At the Thorn family mansion, both families were assembled. My father had flown back overnight. Mr. Thorn Arthur wasted no words. He strode over to Damon and, without warning, brought a riding crop whistling down on his son's arm. It was a real blow. A livid red welt instantly appeared. Arthur Thorn was an avid equestrian and had a collection of such whips. Damon, to his credit, stood his ground, teeth clenched, not uttering a sound as he endured the lashing. After 3 stinging blows, my father, recovering from his shock, finally intervened, grabbing Arthur's arm. "Old Thorn, what are you doing? Let's talk about this calmly. It's the children's matter." They were old army buddies, a bond forged in shared hardship. Arthur, still seething, managed one more strike before my father fully restrained him. "Calmly? With this beast?" he roared. "Killing him today would save me from a heart attack later. Messing around outside is one thing, but daring to let those people harass Alara at her own home." I didn't know if Damon was genuinely stupid or if Sylvia had him thoroughly bewitched. In this charged atmosphere, it was obvious Arthur was first making a statement to my family, an apology to his old comrade, by punishing Damon. After the whipping, the divorce and its aftermath could be discussed. That was the protocol. But Damon, ever the fool, chose that moment to interject. "Dad, Sylvia isn't those people. And her child. Leo, he's your grandson." I clearly saw a flicker of, does this imbecile actually possess a brain? Cross Arthur Thorn's face. Eleanor Thorn, Damon's mother, cut in sharply. "Let's get a paternity test." Damon replied, We already did. Leo is my son. I meant, Eleanor said, her voice dripping ice. A paternity test for you and us. Mom. Damon began aghast. Eleanor's composure finally snapped. Don't you dare call me Mom. When you were in college, you refused the path we laid out for you. You accused us of controlling your life, threatened to cut ties. We let you go, let you find yourself. We even secretly supported you, and what did you achieve? Nothing but debt and getting scammed. You came crawling back, willing to start from the bottom, and I thought it was just a rebellious phase. But you are 30 years old now, Damon, and you bring this filth, this utter lack of moral decency to our doorstep. Such a stupid, degenerate creature could not possibly be my son. Damon was speechless. After a heavy, suffocating silence, Arthur Thorne kicked Damon sharply in the back of the knee. Kneel. As Arthur's whip was about to rise again, my father shot me a look, silently urging me to intervene. I ignored him. I was hurt, furious, and in no mood to play peacemaker. So I remained seated, outwardly appearing distraught but inwardly fanning the flames of Arthur's wrath. The Notre Dame bell tower might be missing a ringer, but it wouldn't be me. I'd always been one to return favors with interest. Damon had allowed his mistress to provoke me in my own home and indirectly caused my injury. I couldn't physically retaliate against the child, but the father would bear the consequences. Sylvia wouldn't have dared to show up if Damon hadn't emboldened her. Ultimately, this was Damon's failing. And now, even in this dire situation, he was still defending Sylvia, perhaps even hoping to use these negotiations to bring her back into the fold officially. He had shown absolutely zero consideration for my feelings. So, if he wasn't beaten half to death today, my anger wouldn't subside. If not for our family's business ties and the genuine affection Arthur and Eleanor had shown me these past 3 years, I might have snatched that whip and thrashed him myself. But then the utterly unexpected happened. Again. Before Arthur's whip could descend, Sylvia herself, with Leo in tow, burst into the Thorne mansion, brushing past the restraining hands of the household staff. Seeing Damon kneeling, she didn't hesitate, pulling Leo down to kneel beside him. Uncle, Auntie, she wailed, tears instantly flowing. It's all my fault, 1,000 times my fault. If you must beat someone, beat me. I stared. Now I understood. Damon's astounding stupidity today was clearly a case of, he who lies down with dogs gets up with fleas. Or in this case, he who consorts with pigs adopts their intellect. Not that he was a genius to begin with, but Sylvia's return had clearly amplified his foolishness with a potent, judgment-impairing love-drunk buff. In the rose-tinted world of the love-drunk, they probably couldn't even perceive how insulting their melodramatic display of profound love was to everyone else. Seeing Arthur's whip pause in midair, Sylvia nudged Leo. Call them Grandpa, Grandma, she whispered urgently. The boy looked up at Arthur and Eleanor, his voice surprisingly clear and sweet. Grandpa, Grandma. Arthur and Eleanor both shot me a quick, horrified glance. I saw an expression of acute nausea and embarrassment on their faces, as if they'd just swallowed a fly. Taking my cue and granting them a measure of dignity, I rose. Uncle, Auntie, I won't disturb your family reunion any longer. My mother and father also stood. Old Thorne, my father said. We'll take our leave for now. I had the confidence to walk out. I wasn't sure Damon had the guts to let me. If I left now, the Thorne Corporation stock would be in freefall by morning. Never mind the immediate losses from our new joint project collapsing due to this schism. 3 years ago, when Damon and I married, Thorne Industries had been facing a severe cash flow crisis. My father, out of loyalty to his old friend Arthur, had stepped in to help. Damon and I were deeply in what I thought was love back then, so the marriage solidified the alliance. Sure enough, as I stood, Arthur Thorne stepped in front of me. Elara, you're not the one who should be leaving. His voice was firm. This is the Thorne family's disgrace, and we have wronged you deeply. To spare you any further distress, the divorce will happen today. As compensation, 30% of Thorne Industries shares will be transferred to your name. And if you still consider me a father figure, you will be my goddaughter. I shook my head. My father also clapped Arthur's shoulder. Old friend, don't say things in anger. Deal with your family matters first. Since Sylvia's arrival, I've been watching their little family drama. Just then, I caught Sylvia's subtle movement. She surreptitiously pinched Leo. The boy, with an air of innocent spontaneity, got up and ran to hug Arthur's leg. Grandpa. Using the blood tie to trump my non-blood relationship. Clever. Very smoothly executed. Just deployed in entirely the wrong setting. Arthur Thorne kicked the child away. Get out. A real kick sending the boy sprawling nearly 10 feet. Leo, shocked and hurt, burst into loud wailing cries. Sylvia and Damon both lunged forward. Damon reached Leo first, scooping him up. Sylvia, just like yesterday, hovered, checking for injuries, but this time she didn't dare speak, just continued to weep silently. Damon roared at his father. Dad, for an outsider you kick your own grandson. I stiffened. Outsider. I looked pointedly at Damon. We weren't divorced yet. Before I could even speak, Damon turned his fury on me. Alara, it's just a divorce. Do you have to be so damned aggressive? ? My fury erupted, all considerations of family ties and business interests incinerated in its heat. Damon, what in God's name are you barking about? I screamed. After what you've done today, calling you an animal is an insult to animals. Damon was stunned into silence. And another thing, I continued, my voice shaking with rage. You keep insisting Sylvia isn't a mistress. Show me your marriage certificate with her. I'll sue you for bigamy right now. Damon remained silent, his face paling. Sylvia, however, wouldn't be cowed. Ms. Linwood. I cut her off savagely. Until I am officially divorced from Damon, I am Mrs. Thorne. And as for Miss, you were the one working as a miss in a bar, weren't you? Have you forgotten, Miss Sylvia? Sylvia's face turned deathly white. She swayed as if she might faint. Damon caught her, then rounded on me again. Alara, watch your tone. Sylvia only worked in that bar because she had to support my child. Watching this scene, hearing his idiotic defense, I don't know if it was the sheer, unadulterated disgust, but a wave of nausea overwhelmed me. I doubled over, vomiting. It grew worse and dizziness followed. Soon after, I was back in the hospital. Because of that imbecile Damon, I'd been hospitalized twice in 2 days. What rotten luck. And the luck got even worse. The blood tests came back. I was pregnant. My mind flashed back to a particular night last month. Staring at the report, a chill seeped into my bones. Was this a cosmic joke, designed to maximize the drama and my suffering to the absolute limit? The divorce negotiations between our families were temporarily shelved due to this unexpected development. The doctor advised I stay. In the hospital, the emotional turmoil of the past 2 days had likely caused some bleeding, a possible threatened miscarriage. Damon hadn't initially come to the hospital with me this time. Eleanor must have called him, told him I was pregnant. He arrived in the evening. For the first time I saw a flicker of hesitation in his eyes. Just a flicker, nothing more. After a long silence he asked, Alara, what do you want to do? I threw the question back at him. And you? He paused for a good 10 seconds, then finally said, Alara, let's terminate it. Though I knew deep down this was the inevitable outcome, my heart still clenched painfully. I had to admit, a fleeting thought of forgiveness had crossed my mind, a single momentary impulse when I first touched my stomach. But like his hesitation, it was just a flicker, nothing more. A long silence stretched. Finally I said, get out. Even a dog knows to wag its tail. You're useless. Damon said nothing, just turned and left. 2 days later I was discharged. I scheduled the procedure for the following week. During my hospital stay, Eleanor Thorne stayed by my side constantly. She subtly hinted that if I chose to keep the child, everything Thorne Industries owned would eventually belong to this child. Damon would be completely cut out. If I chose not to, she would formally adopt me as her goddaughter, and the 30% share transfer Arthur had mentioned in anger would be honored. It was compensation and an apology. But I refused. Damon was Damon. They were they. I held grudges, but I knew who owed the debt. After I came home, my mother hovered around me constantly, as if I might attempt suicide at any moment. I wanted to tell her to stop. I, the actual victim, wasn't dissolving into daily tears, yet she'd start weeping every time she looked at me. Finally, the next day I couldn't take it anymore and had someone gently suggest she might be more comfort to my father. Her emotional state was seriously hampering my calculations on how to ensure Damon left with absolutely nothing and how to reclaim the villa and sports car he'd bought for Sylvia and Leo, all purchased with our marital assets, which were primarily my money. Damon and I had signed a prenuptial agreement. Premarital assets weren't an issue. Besides, he had very little of his own from before our marriage. Given his disastrous early attempts at entrepreneurship, Arthur had installed him as CEO of Thorne Industries but granted him no shares or real executive power. He was merely a high-level employee. However, in the 3 years of our marriage we had started a joint company, and its assets had already grown to over $100 million. He would not get a single cent. I wouldn't lose both the man and the money. Sylvia found me again just as I was leaving a meeting with my lawyer. She cornered me as I exited my company building. I knew why she was seeking me out. Damon, under immense pressure from Arthur and Eleanor, had been diligently reporting to Thorne Industries for the past few days, handling transition work. He hadn't been to see her. To appease my family and stabilize the situation, Arthur was in the process of ousting Damon from the company. Sylvia's gambit of using Leo to force her way into the Thorne family had failed spectacularly. Her dramatic interruption of our family's negotiations had resulted in Arthur and Eleanor flatly refusing to acknowledge her child. She'd also received several sharp slaps from Eleanor for her audacity. This time Sylvia came alone. She blocked my path. "Elara," she said, her voice strained. "Damon doesn't love you. He has only ever loved me. He married you because I wasn't around. Why are you trying to trap him with the baby in your belly?" She then launched into a tirade. "You say I'm emotionally blackmailing you, but isn't what you're doing now trying to hold on to him this way just as shameless, just as much emotional blackmail?" She followed this with a long rambling account of her and Damon's shared past. "Only me emotionally blackmailing? Me shameless?" Her double standards were so ludicrous I almost laughed. But I wouldn't stoop to arguing with her. To deal with a love-addled brain, one had to use love-addled tactics. I looked at her, my expression carefully calibrated to convey sincerity. "Have you ever checked how many other women Damon has on the side? You know, these alliance marriages. There's not much real affection. So we both play around. As far as I know, the count of his other women is in double digits. You're just the only one brazen enough to show up with a child, you shameless creature." Sylvia's whole body trembled. Impossible. I recalled the details my investigators had unearthed about them just days ago. A small cruel smile played on my lips. "You and Damon have been reunited for over 2 months now, haven't you? If he's so devoted to you, how did I end up pregnant? Is this your great love?" Sylvia's face went ashen. I truly hated reliving that night. It was a night Damon, undoubtedly guilt-ridden, had tried to compensate with an uncharacteristic effort in bed. We had planned for me to have a child at 27, so we hadn't been using protection. That's how this baby came to be. That night, Damon had come home very late, likely after spending time with Sylvia and Leo. I, however, had naively assumed he was working late at the office. I'd left work early, specifically to make his favorite soup, and waited up for him. When he saw me waiting, a flicker of guilt had indeed crossed his eyes, but I, self-deceivingly, had interpreted it as guilt for making me cook and wait so long. I'd initiated the kiss. I suppressed my revulsion and continued to torment Sylvia. "Why did you really come to confront me? Wasn't it because Damon worried about our family's business collaboration, kept delaying bringing up divorce, and you got impatient, forcing you to take matters into your own hands? And even your appearance at the Thorne mansion? Wasn't that because you were afraid Damon would ultimately compromise, so you deliberately came to disgust my family, ensuring they'd also push for the divorce?" Sylvia was speechless. I cast a disdainful glance at her. "Don't talk to me about love. You're just leveraging your child for status." Then, remembering something my investigators had uncovered only in the last couple of days, I added, "If Damon knew about the things you've done behind his back, do you think he'd still forgive you?" Sylvia took several deep, shuddering breaths before visibly composing herself. I pushed past her and walked away. In doing so, I missed the venomous, hateful glare she directed at my retreating back. 2 days later, as I was heading home from work, descending the short flight of steps outside my building, I felt a sudden gust of cold air behind me. Then a forceful shove sent me tumbling down the stairs. Thankfully, the steps weren't high. I landed with only minor scrapes and bruises. But as I looked up and saw Sylvia's son, Leo, standing at the top of the stairs, a chillingly triumphant look on his small face, I decisively lay back down, feigning greater injury, and dialed emergency services. My 3rd hospital visit. Excellent. Sylvia was truly something else. Half a month later, I successfully underwent the termination procedure, and spent some time recuperating in the hospital before returning home. My mother started watching me with tear-filled eyes again. "Elara, darling, if you're sad, just cry it out. This appearance of indifference, it worries me." Her concern wasn't unfounded. I was the type to bottle up my sorrow, letting it fester until it reached a breaking point, at which point problems would arise. For years ago, when my grandfather passed away, it was perhaps the saddest period of my life. My father, busy doting on my mother since I was very young, had largely left my upbringing to my grandfather. I was in essence raised by him. After his death, I went to work normally during the day but suffered from terrible insomnia at night. Eventually I made myself sick. My mind became foggy, disoriented. I mistook a steep drop for flat ground and ended up with a fractured bone. It was because of that fracture that I'd seriously considered marrying Damon. I'd spent a month in the hospital, and he had been there every day, caring for me meticulously. He even carried me to the restroom for an entire month without a single complaint. Curled in his arms, listening to his heartbeat, I'd felt an immense sense of security. During that time, even his somewhat cool demeanor had thawed. He'd even tell me lame jokes. "Why are you being so good to me?" I'd asked him. He'd playfully tapped my nose. "Alara, you're my girlfriend. If I'm not good to you, who would I be good to?" But now I knew the truth. It wasn't affection. He was atoning. Atoning for his sins against Sylvia. The last time Sylvia had cornered me, she'd spewed a litany of their past. Among the stories was the reason for their breakup. Years ago, Sylvia had fainted with a high fever, but Damon wasn't home. She'd lain alone on the cold floor for hours, eventually waking up and dragging herself to the hospital. She'd called Damon from there, but he hadn't even answered his phone. He was out schmoozing clients, drinking for a business deal. When he finally got home drunk, he hadn't even noticed Sylvia was missing. He'd gone to work early the next day as usual. That was when Sylvia, utterly disheartened, had chosen to break up and leave a city. The arms I once found solace in were merely a vessel for his lingering guilt over another. Now that regret had returned, those arms became my poison. That's why Sylvia dared to so brazenly provoke me, to provoke Arthur and Eleanor Thorne, even addled by too many CEO novels, to dare to break the law. Damon was still drowning in guilt for Sylvia, unable to extricate himself. His guilt was so profound, he'd unconditionally cover for her. But this time Damon probably couldn't cover for her. The day after I returned home, Damon appeared before me again. He was here to beg me to spare Sylvia. Sylvia had calculated correctly. Her son was only 5, so even if something happened to me, Leo wouldn't face jail time. But she hadn't counted on Leo disobeying her instructions. At the police station, he'd blurted out, "My mommy said that woman deserved to die. She said if I pushed her and made the baby in her tummy go away, my daddy wouldn't be stolen." And I, conveniently, had provided the police with the security footage from Sylvia's first visit to my home, showing Leo pushing me. Now, Sylvia had been detained for over half a month. Damon was frantically searching for lawyers to defend her, but the success rate was 0. Hence, his plea to me, hoping I'd issue a letter of forgiveness. He even had the audacity to say that if I let Sylvia go, he would agree not to divorce me. He promised never to see Sylvia again and to send Leo abroad, ensuring the child would never be acknowledged by the Thorne family. I didn't know where he got the nerve or the confidence to utter such words. Did he think his love-addled brain was contagious? Not divorce me? To torment me for a lifetime? Since he wasn't going to see her anyway, wouldn't Sylvia serving some jail time, getting a criminal record, be far more satisfying than her walking free, able to reappear in my life whenever she pleased? I smiled sweetly at Damon. "You love her so much, why beg me? Wouldn't taking her place in jail be a grander romantic gesture?" I even, in a fit of good humor, looked up online the procedures for serving someone else's sentence and whether it was illegal. My finger slipped and I accidentally clicked into a novel about substitute imprisonment. Well, same difference. I'd read it to give him comprehensive advice. I got to a crucial point and then, to be continued. My frustration boiled over. I stormed into the comments section. "Platform, I am your premium member, not your sworn enemy." My father threw Damon out. Before he was ejected, I slapped the signed divorce agreement into his hands. He scanned it, then angrily questioned, "The house and car I bought for Sylvia were with my own money." I smirked. "Don't give me that nonsense. Anything bought during the marriage is joint marital property. If you don't return it, I'll sue her for fraud. That villa, the sports car, plus the cash you gave her. It's enough for a 10-year sentence. Add the current charge of intentional injury, and with combined sentences, she'll spend half her life in there. Let's see whose lawyer is better. Or do you think your parents will offend my family for a mere mistress?" Damon was even more dissatisfied. "Why should I leave with nothing?" I shot him a look. "You don't have to leave with nothing. If you want tomorrow's city headline to be Thorne heir cheats, conspires with mistress to murder wife, be my guest." Damon paled. That kind of news would instantly tank the Thorne family's stock. Finally, Damon signed the divorce agreement. After Damon left, my father looked at his retreating back, shaking his head in disappointment. He's finished. ? I looked at my father. What did you do? My father sneered. He bullied my daughter. What do you think I did? I thought I really don't know. Your singular devotion to mom all these years is public knowledge. I'm just a blade of grass in your grand garden of affection. While I was pondering this, there was another knock on the door. A young man stood outside. He looked vaguely familiar. After a moment I recognized him. Miles Ashworth, the head of the Ashworth Corporation. He went into the study with my father. They talked until sunset. When they emerged, the key words on the documents Miles held seemed to be related to my father's new project. Was my father abandoning the partnership with the Thorns because of me? Suddenly I felt like my father might actually love me a little. But I wasn't entirely sure. I needed more observation. 3 days later, Sylvia's sentence came down. 3 months in prison. When Damon and I went to the Civil Affairs Bureau, he was still snarling at me. Are you happy now, Alara? I waved my freshly minted divorce certificate at him. Delighted. As I was about to leave the bureau, I turned back and out of kindness, told him something. Originally, Sylvia was facing a year. Do you know, when you were powerless to help, which family spent a fortune to hire the best lawyers for her? I paused for effect. And also, why is it that after Sylvia broke up with you and raised Leo alone for over 5 years without ever inquiring about your background, she suddenly learned of your Thorn heir status now? Damon's head snapped up, his eyes wide with shock. I walked away without a backward glance. As I said, he was stupid. A love-addled fool. He only remembered to investigate how miserably Sylvia had lived all these years, not why she had suddenly reappeared. 3 months later, Sylvia was released from prison. Damon, with Leo, personally went to pick her up. How did I know? Some unscrupulous paparazzi had specifically staked out the prison. When our two families officially decoupled, both our stocks took a hit. However, my family stabilized quickly. My father, abandoning all pretense of martial virtue, directly publicized Damon's affair and the existence of his illegitimate child. Standing on the moral high ground, he publicly condemned Damon. Now Damon and Sylvia were being vilified online. My father then smoothly transitioned the new project to collaborate with a superior choice, Miles Ashworth and the Ashworth Corporation, gaining a wave of positive publicity in the process. So it seemed my father did love me after all. Breaking the contract with the Thorns also served as a form of revenge on my behalf. But not that much love, evidently, since he was also using his daughter's misfortune to hype his project. Arthur Thorn, to stabilize his company, officially ousted Damon and, just like years ago, exiled him. He also publicly announced to the media that the Thorn family would not acknowledge Damon's illegitimate son. Although I always knew Arthur and Eleanor Thorn were people of integrity, I was genuinely surprised they would truly disown their grandson. He was, after all, their flesh and blood. My father even mentioned that when he visited the Thorns a few days ago, he thought he saw Eleanor Thorn making preparations as if she were trying to conceive again. ? My father glanced at me. Old Thorn found out some things. A few days later, while helping my father with errands related to the Ashworth project, I saw Damon again. He was job hunting, submitting his resume to Ashworth Corporation. He was rejected. Arthur Thorn must have been truly furious this time. He'd contacted all his influential acquaintances in a city, determined to teach Damon a lesson. The reason was precisely what Arthur had found out. Sylvia had been brought back by the CEO of Thorn Industries' main rival. Over a year ago, this rival company had competed with Thorn Industries for the same project and been thoroughly outmaneuvered. Resentful, they'd hatched a plan to drive a wedge between my family and the Thorns. After all, if the Linwoods and Thorns split, Thorn Industries' strength would indeed be diminished by nearly half. And as fate would have it, the rival CEO on a business trip encountered a miniature version of Damon Leo. This shrewd, dark-hearted man had a chat with Sylvia, gave her a sum of money, and made one simple request: ensure Alara and Damon divorced. When Arthur Thorn finished his investigation, he'd roared at Damon, "You were played, you idiot." Damon, upon learning this, had defiantly retorted, "Even if it was a setup, Sylvia's child is still my child. Can I just ignore them? For your business, for your damned friendship with the Linwoods, you disown your own grandson." Arthur had been speechless for a moment. Then he'd countered, "And the child in Alara's womb, wasn't that yours too?" Damon's reply was chillingly callous. "That child just came at the wrong time. Alara didn't want to have it either, did she?" Arthur had laughed, a harsh, bitter sound. "Alara and the child in her womb, what did they ever do to you to deserve such contempt?" and then you have the gall to blame them. Arthur delivered his ultimatum. A woman like Sylvia, with no more moral fiber than you, will never be acknowledged by the Thorne family. Given what she's done, if I let her in, the Thorne family would be ruined by her sooner or later. If you insist on being with her, then go with her. Everything the Thorne family has will have nothing to do with you. Damon chose Sylvia. So the answer to my earlier question to Sylvia, would Damon forgive her if he knew what she'd done, was a resounding yes. I watched Damon, resume in hand, dejectedly leave the Ashworth building. Fair enough. I hoped that after I delivered my little gift in a few days, they would still be able to walk hand in hand, forever locked together. However Sylvia and Damon had disgusted me, I would return the favor in full. I met a man. There was nothing particularly special about him. If anything stood out, it was that he had once helped Sylvia raise Leo and had been her benefactor for a while when she worked in the bar. I didn't do much. I just gave him a sum of money and arranged for him to rent the apartment next to where Sylvia and Damon now lived. He was carefully selected from Sylvia's former lovers. For one simple reason. His surname was Wong, and he still had feelings for Sylvia. Since Damon and Sylvia wanted to enact the cliché runaway baby mama returns to torment the original wife drama, I would help them. Enrich the plot. Prove their true love. I'd gift them a devoted second male lead to protect their earth-shattering ghost-fearing love. A month later, I ran into Sylvia and Leo shopping at a mall. There were visible bruises on her face. Her fair skin made the discoloration around her mouth starkly evident. This was their great love? A moment later, confirmation. Yes, it was. Because I heard Leo ask, "Mommy, Uncle Wong used to buy me snacks too. Why is Daddy so angry?" Another 3 months passed. At a private club, I witnessed a grand spectacle starring Sylvia and Damon. Damon had finally found a job. Of course, I wouldn't admit I discreetly pulled some strings. My apologies to Arthur Thorne. The salary was decent. The only drawback was that every time he discussed business collaborations, the other party was always a young, beautiful woman who would occasionally get a little too friendly with Damon. Especially if Sylvia happened to be passing by, they'd get even friendlier. After all, what's a dominant CEO without admirers vying for his attention? Today was precisely such a scenario. So there I was, comfortably seated on the second floor, munching on sunflower seeds, watching the drama unfold in a private room below. The wide-open door gave me a perfect live feed. Sylvia was pointing at the representative of Damon's current collaborator, screeching, "You slut, seducing my husband." After a string of vile insults, Damon's face was even uglier than Sylvia's language. He apologized to the pretty young woman, then roared at Sylvia, "Shut up. We're just discussing business." Sylvia was relentless. With those intimate postures, why don't you just take your discussion to bed? The entire club was filled with the city's elite, all of whom, like me, were now gleeful onlookers in this scandalous melon patch. My vantage point was the best, so much so that someone even came over and helped themselves to half my sunflower seeds. Damon finally couldn't stand the public scrutiny. After Sylvia's continued verbal assault, he slapped her hard across the face. "Get out," he snarled, his face contorted with rage, eyes bloodshot and terrifying. Sylvia didn't leave. Instead, she clutched her face and began to wail about their past. "I was with you for over 2 years when you had nothing. I raised our child alone all these years. And now you treat me like this? Do you have any conscience?" They must have rehashed these old grievances countless times recently. Damon instinctively shot back. "Were you really raising him alone?" Crack. A loud crack of a sunflower seed next to me drowned out Damon's next words, so I couldn't tell if he'd yelled, "You bitch," or "You whore." I turned, annoyed. "Could you please be quieter?" The person offered an apologetic smile. "So sorry to interrupt your melon eating. How about I treat you to a cup of tea as compensation?" Interrupted by the sound, I suddenly found the drama less appealing, rather bland. Especially Damon's current state, so starkly different from the man I remembered, the one who had once been good to me, filled me with revulsion. The anger I'd held onto since Sylvia's appearance, that tight knot in my chest, suddenly dissipated. My past love for Damon scattered completely. So I took one last look at the pair in the room below, got up and left. And in my heart I sincerely wished them, "May you be together forever, and live long and wretched lives." At the same time, I hoped never to see either of them again. But things rarely go as planned. 2 years later, I saw Damon again. It was the full moon celebration for Eleanor Thorne's new daughter. My father was on a business trip, and my mother had accompanied him, continuing their lifelong public display of affection. I was tasked with delivering their gift and making an appearance. Although our family's collaboration had lessened after my divorce from Damon, my father and Arthur Thorne still shared that old comrades-in-arms bond, and I had never held any animosity towards Arthur or Eleanor. So I went, only to arrive just as Damon was back at the Thorne mansion, begging his parents for money to save his son. Time had passed. I no longer loved or hated Damon, but his opening words still shocked me. His son Leo was hospitalized in a vegetative state. And the cause? Sylvia herself had pushed him down a flight of stairs, causing him to hit his head. Sylvia's reason for pushing her son was even more ludicrous: to make Damon come home. Over the past 2 years they had argued incessantly. Damon, exhausted, wanted a divorce. Sylvia refused. Damon began to give her the cold shoulder, trying to force her into a divorce. Sylvia, with her eyes on the Thorne family fortune, refused to divorce him even under emotional duress. She believed that even though Arthur and Eleanor had seemingly ignored Damon for over 2 years, he was still their only son, and the Thorne inheritance would inevitably be his. Who knew Arthur and Eleanor would truly pull the rug out from under them, having a second child in their 50s. They'd essentially rebooted their lineage. So Sylvia panicked. She wanted Damon to go back to the Thorne mansion and apologize to his parents. However, Damon couldn't bring himself to lose face. Besides, over these 2 years, apart from Arthur's initial sanctions, he had genuinely let Damon be, treating him as if he no longer had a son. Damon, in these 2 years, had shown some resilience, working his way up to a management position in a company. Though not as affluent as he'd been with the Thornes, his life was certainly comfortable. A modest success. Sylvia had been nagging him about this issue for months. Damon simply stopped coming home. Sylvia's usual method of manipulating Damon was through Leo. Excuses like Leo not feeling well were commonplace to get Damon home. Who would have thought that this time, when Damon heard Leo was sick with a cold again, he completely ignored her and even applied for a business trip. So Sylvia decided to let Leo get genuinely injured to force Damon home, to continue their tug of war. But she miscalculated. Leo fell, hit his head, and became a vegetable. I was speechless. Good heavens. Just good heavens. I suddenly remembered a long time ago, when Sylvia wanted to snatch Damon away from me, it was also because Leo had fallen and hurt his leg. I looked at Damon kneeling on the floor sobbing. I wanted to feel sympathy, but I truly couldn't. He knew Sylvia's manipulative tactics from the start but never stopped her. So, for what happened to his son today, Sylvia was responsible, but so was he. Damon wept. "Dad, Mom, I'm sorry. It was my stupidity, my mistake. I shouldn't have ignored your advice back then. Insisted on divorcing Alara and getting back with Sylvia. But please save him. He's still my son after all." My stomach turned. "Don't cue me, thank you very much." I quickly got up and left. The air in that room was too thick with tragedy and regret, none of which I wanted to breathe.